one thing that I really, really chase is the simplest life of the highest quality. That's like my thing. Like that's like I don't need a million of anything.
All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the show. Welcome to the What You Don't Hear podcast. It's what I like to call a life podcast. It's a life story podcast. It's an open journal dive into people's lives as I sit and I uncover the real story behind my guest journey, finding out what makes them who they are with all that they do, talking about all the ups, all the downs, and all the thoughts and feelings in between, uncovering the parts of their story that, well, we otherwise wouldn't get to hear about. I am your host. My name is Ross Tyson. I'm a creative of many kinds, a maker of many things. And yeah, as you probably guessed, one of those things I do is podcasting, as I bring you a couple different shows at this point. But this one right here, I bring you every other Monday, as well as sporadically on Fridays for the topic-based 15-minute Fridays. And hey, if you really like this show and you want to make sure that you don't miss all of that, here's a quick reminder up front to please hit the follow and subscribe buttons on whatever platform you're checking this out on. Especially if you're on YouTube, hit that like button so it tells the algorithm that this show matters to you. You hear it all the time from every creator, but it truly does help more than you may think. Your support goes a real long way. And speaking of support, I'm going to tell you about a few supporters of this show right here, right now. Pay some bills, and then we're going to dig into this week's episode with my guest, Rio Hairston. Up first, I've been letting you know this, honestly, for months now. If you're looking for a place to live, and you want to live in the middle of the art-filled lifestyle over in Franklinton, then what you don't hear is your hookup, because we are sponsored by our friends over at River and Rich. Now, River and Rich brings together quality apartments, desirable amenities, and a vibrant artistic community. Located right in Franklinton, River and Rich offers 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and townhouse-style apartments with open floor plans, oversized windows, and modern finishes. The amenities, those include a huge 24/7 gym, a heated pool, a fully stocked coffee bar, and a secure package delivery room. Pretty much everything you need for a cool place to live. And it doesn't just stop at the building. River and Rich embraces and connects with the art-filled Franklinton community. They've got local art and murals featured all throughout the community itself. River and Rich is both a place to go home to and is also becoming a living piece of art in its own. So if that environment sounds like something that you want to live in, well, of course, you can. Go check it out. They offer both guided and self-guided tours, so you can go check out an apartment anytime. Visit their website at riverandrichcolumbus.com for more information. Also, check this out. Because you listen to this podcast, I might be able to help you get a freaking apartment, because now new applicants can receive up to half off their security deposit if you use the code WYDH pod. So again, for more information, please contact River and Rich. Certain restrictions might apply. Hop over to riverandrichcolumbus.com to get things moving and go join the colorful life over at River and Rich. This episode is also sponsored by CrossFit Gahanna. Now, this is a place that maybe you've heard me talk about on this show before. That's because it's the gym that I go to almost every day. And yes, I know what you're thinking. CrossFit? Ross, what the heck are you trying to sell me on right now? Listen, I promise it's not as crazy as it sounds or often looks. Legitimately, it's not. If I can get started in it, anybody truly can. For real though, CrossFit Gahanna has become one of my favorite places. And it's not just because of like going in and tossing weights or cool gym moves or whatever. It's because this gym has a community unlike any other that I've ever experienced. An effort to just keep this short and sweet, I'll give you the rundown. You can drop into the gym anytime, whether it's for a class or just to do your own thing in open gym. And you can also get 24-hour access if you become a member, which is pretty dope. But they've also got classes for just all skill levels, beginners to seasoned vets. There's something here for everyone, because honestly, CrossFit is for everyone. But again, my honest selling point more than anything for these guys is the people. The coaches and the community here truly feels like a family. I've never felt that at any other gym that I've ever been to, and it's a big part of what keeps me personally coming back. So if you want to check it out, they're located in, of course, Gahanna, Ohio. Follow them at CrossFit Gahanna OH, or hop over to CrossFitGahanna.com for all the information you need to get your foot in the door and on a path to your fitness journey. We are also supported by our friends over at PromoWest Productions, and this is how I support them back, because if you're interested in catching a live show, well, then maybe you'll want to check out one of these upcoming concerts that are coming your way via PromoWest. They've got Nessa Barrett at Kemba Live on Sunday, October 29th, Slater at Newport Music Hall on November 2nd, Chris Renzema at Newport Music Hall on Friday, November 3rd, and Grace Potter at Kemba Live on November 8th. So if you do want to grab tickets to any of those shows, you can just head over to axs.com, or as always, for more information on these or any other upcoming concerts, if you want to find out who's coming to town and when, you can get all that information that you need over at promowestlive.com. All right, so this week's episode is a fun chat with my new friend, Rio Hairston. It was a blast getting to know him for the first time as we dive into really everything that he does, which is, well, a lot of things. He's a curator of many things, event and festival coordinator, restaurant owner of Marvin's here in Columbus, creative director of Soul Classics, and so much more that we, of course, uncover and get into in this conversation. And obviously, I could relate to a lot of Rio's pursuit of lots of things at once. So it was a very fun conversation to dive into hearing exactly how he got started in all of it, and how one thing led to the next and all of that. We uncover it all in what Rio honestly stated himself as maybe the most detailed and vulnerable interview that he's done. And I'm glad that it happened here. So let's dive into it. This is episode 95 of What You Don't Hear.
Make it happen.
Rio, my friend, welcome to the show, dude.
Thank you for having me. Beautiful space.
Yes, thank you, man. I really do appreciate you being down to be on, because you and I are meeting for the very first time.
Yeah.
So it's easy to be like, all right, this guy wants me on his podcast. Sure, I guess. I have no idea who this is, but here we go.
Nah, I mean, we had a brief conversation before this that almost led into a podcast conversation before we started. So, I definitely dissect and look through and what is this podcast about? What is this person about? So, like I said before, I really respect your direction. I really respect the way you built your brand and positioned it where the people who watch your podcast will actually be interested in what people have to say. A lot of times people don't really care. They're not about to sit and listen and dive into what Rio's life is about. But, the way you position your business, you built that audience. So I actually feel like, okay, maybe, it is worth having this conversation. So I appreciate that.
Right. Yeah, dude. No, I cannot thank you enough for, obviously the kind words, but also, again, being down and seeing those sort of things, because that's the whole thing with this show is I tried to build it off of just genuine, authentic conversations. It's wherever it goes is wherever it goes. And so I'm glad that shines through. And I'm glad the work is paying off. But in that case, it's like you said, you sort of dove into what the show was about, all that sort of stuff. And you're all right, cool. I'm down to share my story on this show. Now, on the flip side, a lot of the times when I have a brand new guest or somebody that I just don't personally know on the show, I don't do a deep dive into everything that they do. So I know the general things that you do, right? Yeah. But I would love to kind of dive into everything, because I know we were talking, again, a little bit before. You had mentioned, you're a wearer of multiple hats, much like myself. So up front, I would love to kind of dive into what all are you involved in? Because like I said, I know a little bit, but I'm sure there's more to that.
Yeah. So the overarching title, I would just say I'm a curator. That's what I'm best at. That's what I get called to do most of the time in so many words. But to break it down, so I own a restaurant called Marvin's with two of my friends, Chuck and Marlon. So I've been in the nightlife business for 15 years, which kind of led to me doing freelance event production. So I work with companies like Nike, Ohio State, just corporate businesses handling campaigns and different, event activations, and as well as my own. I've started doing my own, mini festivals and, events and stuff like that. So events have been a big part of my life for as far back as I can remember. And through doing events, I kind of built up a network in Columbus. And, through nightlife, everything is involved in nightlife: food, fashion, music, everything. So from there, I just kind of branched from nightlife. I dabble in the food with the restaurant. I would probably say my biggest passion is fashion. Working at Soul Classic as the creative director and apparel buyer. So just anything in those spaces, man, it's like there's a million things on the event side, there's a million things on the fashion side, and there's a million things on the freelance side. But as those are the three kind of pillars of what I do.
Yeah. So when you look back, like, do you feel like you always felt like you were going to end up in a position like this, of like either working in the creative world or the entrepreneur world, or was that like a thing that popped up later?
For sure. My whole life I was an entrepreneur.
Okay.
I've always had a job, because that's just how my father was. He, owned businesses, but he always kept a job. Like, it was like he's a very safe person, and I'm not as safe, but I always like, all right, let me find a job doing something I like to do, even if it doesn't pay a lot, because it opens up doors for me. I get to learn, I get to network, I get to use that as a tool, a means to, be a part of something, but then create my own things. And I don't have as much pressure in creating those things because I have that, thing that's consistent. Mm-hmm. But I've always been an entrepreneur. Like, ever since I had a landscaping company, I had a marketing company. I didn't even know what marketing was. Like, as a kid, I've always just been like a creator. Like, I just think about things when I go to sleep, and when I wake up, I just like get to it and create it. And that's still how I live my life. A lot of these things that I'm doing today are things like I lay down and I'm like a zombie. I can't sleep. All I can do is think about, like, a constant thing I ask myself is, if money wasn't an issue, what would I do? And it's always like, y'all would have the coolest clothing store in the world. I would have the craziest restaurant, like, because it wouldn't be about making money. It would be about making something just so special and pure. And I wake up every day and I pursue that, and I'm not there yet, but like I'm in those spaces, and that's just kind of like my DNA.
And so you feel like you were kind of always, whether you could articulate that or not, because obviously when we're kids, it's more just like, oh, we have an imagination, we'd like to do cool things. Sure. So we're, like you said, we're not sitting there like, marketing and branding, like, we're never thinking that way. But you feel like you kind of always had that flow of like thought process.
I knew like, I'm going to be a business owner.
Yeah.
The struggle was what business, because all I was thinking about at that point in my journey was, what business is going to make me the most money? Right. I knew I was going to be a business owner. I knew I was going to be an entrepreneur, but entrepreneurship to me at that point was about what makes me the most money. Mm-hmm. Where like at this point, where I've tried a million things, I've been involved in a million things, I've worked with some of the greatest companies, some of the greatest individuals, and I built personal relationships with people who have been through everything I've already been through, and they're at the pinnacle. And I've just like been able to really understand that the most successful people weren't doing it for money. Well, the most successful people I know. I know there's some people who wake up and eat, sleep, dream money, and they're very ultra successful. But the people I've had the pleasure of being around that were super successful, their drive wasn't money. Mm-hmm. So that kind of shifted. It's like, what will make me a morning person? Like, what will make me be like, man, I can't wait to get up tomorrow. Like 8, man, that's too late. I got to get up at 5 because I can't wait to get to doing what I do. And that's what kind of like the shift has been. But I've always known like, nah, I'm going to be an entrepreneur.
So did you grow up here in Columbus, or are you from anywhere like elsewhere?
Born and raised in Columbus. Yeah.
Okay, so take me back to that. What is growing up like? Now, I know you said this earlier. You said a lot of people tend to know Rio. Not everybody knows Mario.
For sure.
So take me back to what growing up for Mario was like.
Yeah. And people who do know me as, from the beginning, it's been a journey. It's been a very long journey. I went to 4 different high schools. I lived in a lot of different areas in Columbus. Not the best. I come from, I come from the hood pretty much. I come from low income family. I come from, the typical inner city story is, my story. So it was a journey. I don't even know where to even start, like where to be like, all right, I grew up here. I went to this school. I lived in this neighborhood. This was I don't have a traditional, like, lineup. Like,
Right. And so you had mentioned earlier that, like, and obviously clarify for me, like you had mentioned earlier that, like, dad was sort of an inspiration when it came to, like, work ethic and stuff. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
My dad is, like, the hardest working person I know, and he does it with ease. Like, he's like this little Italian guy that's, like, does everything with his hands. He, like, he's been working on cars forever. He's worked for, like, all the big car companies. And he's, like, amazing. He can fix anything with his eyes closed, but he owns a lot of rental properties. And he fixes them all up by himself, plumbing, electric, everything. So he's, like, one of those people who can figure anything out and can do anything. And his work ethic is crazy, but he's very grounded in the sense of, I also watched him, own a business, have to file bankruptcy, start all over with nothing, and build piece by piece and be patient and be diligent and be, shut everything out and nothing matters, but, tunnel vision and build up to, a good life, so I've had that, I've got to see that, early.
So do you feel like that was, like, while you were growing up, and you said, it wasn't like a traditional, like, there was this and that and that. It was like there was some of this, some of that over there, moving around, all that sort of stuff. Do you feel like that seeing your dad in those ways and have that work ethic and start those businesses and all that sort of stuff, do you feel like that was maybe, like, one of like your, like, main constants growing up, that you kind of had that to kind of always look at as, like, okay, regardless of what else is happening, there's still that thing that I feel like is I'm seeing it as possible?
Yeah, but I didn't recognize it at the time.
Yeah, okay.
I didn't understand longevity. I understood right now. And the people that I seen getting money right now, doing, like the options for me for, like, all right, I need money today. Like, we don't have money. I lived with my mother. My parents weren't together. So everybody I seen who was getting money right away, the only ways I knew how to get money, like, today, because we don't have money for tomorrow, we're doing things that, were illegal. So over time, I seen the longevity. I understood the importance of longevity. I understood the importance of building something that of actual value and of actual substance, and that there is no overnight option. Some people get lucky and hit it big overnight, but 9.9 out of 10 times that's not the case. Like, you really have to build something. Same way you built this business. The day two, you weren't rolling in the dough, getting, you weren't where you are today. And that's just kind of, I didn't understand at the time. I seen my dad working, but I didn't understand, all right, what is he building towards? What's it going to look like at the end? And these people who are getting this, quick money today, what's it going to look like for them in the end? Like, if you take both of their stories in 10 years, what are they going to look like?
Right.
And I didn't understand that at the time, but I've always been, even to this day, a very observant person. And I always seek out people who are doing things that I aspire to do. I always try to get around people who are doing things that, like, if you're a good father to your kids, and I love the way you parent, and I love how, you're an entrepreneur and you're a great father, and you're, like, I want to be around that type of person, because that's where I'm going with my life. I want to just bring those things in. I've always been like that. So throughout my journey, I started to pick that up. I started to pick up the importance of longevity, the importance of building something, the importance of, brick by brick. It's like every day we just get a little bit better. We just get, we got a house today, we fix one little thing at a time. And then, you got something that you built long term with real value, with real, just substance.
Yeah, well, I think that's the value, to stay on, like, the house analogy, is like, because I say this a lot to people, is like, I feel like most often a lot of us tend to focus on, like, when we are building that house, that figurative house, we're thinking about, like, how cool we want the living room to look, the color on the walls, the carpet, the whatever, when it's like, what is our foundation made of?
For sure.
Like, do we have a strong foundation built into this house, or did we just go through that real quick, not really care because we want to get to the cooler, the flashier part? But that cool and flashy living room or whatever might crumble under a very unstable foundation. So you're 100% right in the, like, it does take that brick by brick mentality. Now, when you're growing up, on one hand, we're seeing dad and his business endeavors. and you're understanding it's possible, but you're not putting two and two together of like, oh, I can start, because of course, what kid is really, right? What kid is like, I'm going to start building my business today.
Yeah.
And in 10 years, I'll be good. And then on the other hand, you're seeing how, people can make that money instantly, make the money in the now. Where did you land at growing up? Like, what was your outlet, I guess is what I'm asking. Like, did you find a creative outlet early on, or was it just kind of like, I was just being a kid and just kind of going with the flow?
I feel like there was a couple like very pivotal moments in my journey that kind of took me from this way to this way, because it definitely could have went very far the wrong way. And I would say one of those things was like when I started doing events, like throwing parties at nightclubs. I was young, I was just throwing parties, and I wasn't making much money, but I was making money doing something I was going to go do for free and spend money. Like I was going to go spend money doing it because I enjoy it that much. Who doesn't at that age love going out, kicking it, getting dressed, being around music and women and just having a good time. And I was getting paid to do it, and I enjoyed it, and I looked forward to it, and I was so happy to like promote it and push it. And I felt like I was building something. I was doing it with two of my very close friends, and it was just like, it was a good feeling. Even though we weren't making that much money, it still was like, yo, you can make money doing something you enjoy doing. Mm-hmm. And that kind of was a pivot for me. And another one, I had a friend, I played AAU basketball, where it's like, the kids from the hood with the most talent mixed up with the kids from the rich families, because it costs so much to play and travel. And, it's like this big mixture of people. And I had, friends who had 2-parent households and lived in the suburbs in nice homes. And one friend in particular, I always tell this story every time I see him. Like, it's like you had a couple drinks, they're like, bro, it's like, I love you to death, man. And I always tell my friend, his name is Chris Crockett, and his dad's name is Richard Crockett. And his dad, for some reason, just took a liking to me as kids. We would always be at his house. He was a single dad raising his son. I never seen like the kid live with the dad, and he was an entrepreneur, and they were successful. His son went to the best schools. He was a great athlete, went on to go to Ivy League. It was just like a black guy, and I never had seen that before. So not only didn't I see it, but he embraced me, and he would like come pick me up, take me to lunch, and we would just have these conversations about business, about life, about how he raised his son to be certain ways. Because when I was around Chris, I was one of those kids where like everybody would be going to Cedar Point having no money, and I'd be like, yo, I'm gonna just chill, I don't got no money. Chris would be like, nah, bro, I want you to come, I'll take care of it, mm-hmm. And I would be like, and I would just, it was, and he never talked about it, never brought it ever back up ever again. It was not like one of those things, people give you to hang over your head, or, tell people like, oh yeah, it was just how he was raised, and
right.
So being able to see that and be around that and be embraced by that really was like, yo, what I see every day is not just the only option, mm-hmm. Because even when I see my father working, he wasn't there yet. He wasn't there yet. So when I seen that, I'm like, yo, there's other options for me. Mm-hmm. There's other outcomes that I can have other than what I see every day. And those two kind of things like really shaped where I went from there.
Yeah. Okay, so what age were you when you started throwing the events?
I was maybe 17, 16.
So how do you even get involved in being able to throw events that can make you money? Because I feel like, just like you said, most 17-year-olds are like, oh, we'll just throw a party at this person's house and we're just going to hang out. And it's more of just a party, a hangout, not so much an event where money can be made. Like, what is that transition like?
So it's strange. So like my hardships became in my journey, a lot of the hardships I had turned into like great things for me. So one of the things, I went to 4 different high schools. I went to 3 different middle schools, 5 different elementaries. I knew everybody already. I knew a lot of people in Columbus. I was always like one of the cooler kids like in school. So I knew a lot of people. A lot of people gravitated towards me. And I had a lot of older friends. I'm sorry, that was me this whole time. I thought I turned that off.
Oh no, you're good. You're good.
So I had a lot of older friends. Like me and my best friend, we hung out with his older brother and all his friends. Mm-hmm. So I knew everybody that was older than me. So I was like 16, 17, but all my parties were like 18 and up because I knew everybody who was already able to go out at that time. So they weren't, in the beginning, it was like, somebody's having this party, and they're like, yo, I want you to help me promote it because you know everybody. So then I'm like helping them promote their parties, but then my age group is starting to be turn of age to be able to go out. That 18-year-old where, clubs that are 18 and up, they can get into. So they're seeing me already doing parties at this young age, and they just are like, they can't wait to like, yo, as soon as I turn 18, that's the guy I'm going to, I know he does this, and his parties look so cool. So then I started doing my own events, and it was just like clockwork. Like everybody's turning 18, all my direct peers, everybody I'm in school with, everybody I'm about to go off to college with, they're all of age now and can go out. And they've been seeing me as the guy, a part of this nightlife scene. So I was all of their introduction into the nightlife scene.
Okay, so how long does that last for? Like, would you say like that was your quote-unquote thing for a handful of years? Like, was that where you found yourself?
Yeah. It lasted so long that I have an event on Friday.
I love it. All right, so we're still doing it.
Yeah, so like now it's a little different. Like now, I'm kind of like, now that I have my own spot, I'm about to open up another location. It's more so the curation. Like, I just want to curate experiences. But for that lasted, it never stopped. It just transitioned to like different
other doors open to other things. And so I guess what was then the next thing? Do you feel like the next door opened for you?
It was probably fashion.
Okay.
I started to get to that age where I was making enough money to buy, like, we would make $200 at the end of the night, each. We would split $600, and then 150 of it would be for an outfit. Like, we were never really making money at that point, but then that was always like a focal point of like, yo, we need a new outfit every time we go out. It was just like, that was kind of how it started. And then another one of my like most tragic moments that turned into one of my greatest moments is I used to drive the Coda bus. I was the youngest employee at Coda at the time. I was 21 driving the Coda bus, and I threw a party in Cleveland, and on the way back I got a DUI.
Oh wow.
And I lost the job. So obviously my license is suspended. I can't drive the Coda bus. Mm-hmm. So it was like Christmas time. My daughter was a newborn. I was like, it was just like a tragic time. So I got this job working at this place called Tiger Tree, a clothing store in the short north. It was seasonal. So it was my first time ever working retail, but it was owned by a husband and wife. So it was like, I got to, it wasn't owned by a corporation where I just had one specific job and I did that and I went home. It was like, I got to see and talk to and ask questions and understand how that worked. Mm-hmm. So then it went from, I like to dress fly, to, wow, the business of it is actually interesting. It's actually pretty cool, and from there, I lost the job after Christmas was over because January is like the worst time in the year for retail, and it was a seasonal position. So just so happened at that time, this brand from Columbus called Tacma was opening a retail store here. It's owned by Jeffrey Schottenstein from the Schottensteins family. They were opening a retail store right across the street from Tiger Tree on High Street. And from all those years of throwing parties and like being the guy on the scene and stuff like that, a friend of mine, Ed Givens from Cleveland, was a big part of the brand. He knew me because he was doing the same thing in Cleveland. So, we connect. When he come here, he would come to my events. I would go there. I'll go to his events. And he was like, yo, we're opening a store in Columbus. We want somebody not just to run the store, but help grow the brand here. Since I knew everybody, blah, blah, blah. So I went from like a seasonal sales associate to a manager of a store, just like that. Like, it just rolled out. Couldn't have been any more perfect from there to there. And then that kind of birthed everything that I'm doing today.
So during that time frame, you're kind of balancing, like, you've got your event stuff going on. You're starting to get more interested in fashion, but of course we're working a job, right? We're working for
a real job.
Yes, a quote unquote real job, right? And you also mentioned that you just had your first child at that point in time.
Yes.
Do you remember, like, what was going through your mind during that time frame? Like, do you feel like did fatherhood change anything? Was there any part of your trajectory where you're like, man, I want to do all these things, but now my responsibility is not just me having a good time. I now have, like, this new responsibility in life. Like, because we were talking about, balancing all the things, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's always so easy we can always talk about, like, balancing all the cool creative endeavors and all that sort of stuff. Right. But when we peel that curtain back, it's like, all right, we're also balancing all of this stuff as a human being well.
For sure.
Did that change anything for you, or were you just, like, kind of so well kind of in your flow at that time that you were like, hey, you know what? Like, we're just going to kind of keep going?
No, it was actually pretty chaotic time.
Okay.
It was like, being a parent to me was never a question of, like, being there. Like, it was like, oh, this is about to be the coolest thing ever. I'm about to have my daughter, like, into fashion. Her first 3 birthdays, she took her first steps on South Beach, on Ocean Drive. Like, on her birthday, I would take her to Miami. Like, you're going to be, at the beach. You're going to be, like, and this is funny, Rolling Loud, the festival. Mm-hmm. So that started, like, my daughter's first birthday, or second birthday. So the first year we went, it was cool. It was, me and my daughter enjoying it. Second year we went was Rolling Loud weekend. So the whole country was in Miami. All of my friends are there. So there's, like, a picture of, like, me and, like, 20 of my friends on Ocean Drive, and I got my daughter, on her
awesome.
second birthday. So it wasn't, it didn't slow down for me. Like, that was, like, a moment where things were, like, picking up, and I couldn't slow down because, I never really had money. Like, there were times where I did better than others. Coda was a great job, and I had stuff going on the side, but it was I never could get over that hump. Mm-hmm. So it was always full steam ahead until I could get over that hump. And I was always fighting that, like, I can't slow down because then everything slows down. But what I do for a living isn't traditional. It isn't, what you would want from your husband, or, like, what, like, it just wasn't what you typically see, and I didn't really know how to navigate it because I was so young still, and so, like, young in business. I didn't, I didn't really know I didn't even know what balance was. It was just like, this is what I got going on. If you're in my life, like, come on, like, saddle up. We're going for a ride. And having a daughter, it made me feel different. It made me, like, I just fell in love with being a dad. Like, it's just such a fun experience for me being a father. But it was never like, dang, I got this kid now. Let me go get a job at the bank.
Of course,
Let me, like, really settle down and, like, slow down and get dot my I's and cross my T's. It was never that.
Yeah, which I love that, like, it's always interesting. That's even why I asked that, is because it's always interesting to find out when, I have somebody on the show, or I'm just talking to somebody in general who is a parent, who is balancing or attempting to balance, right? All these, like, creative endeavors or business endeavors, or just, like, in general, living a fulfilled life while also being a parent, because that does obviously take a ton of work. It's always interesting to me to find out how everybody navigates those different things. And like you said, it's like when you start having that momentum, it's like, all right, I love the idea of, like, cool, I now have this child. Now how do I just, like, this kid is now a part of my life. It doesn't necessarily have to change everything. Like you said, it's not like, all right, I gotta go get a job at a bank and it's time for no more fun or no more dreams or whatever. Because I do, in a strange way, even though I understand it, but I still think it's strange. I'm not a parent yet, so I don't know. But there are, some people who do kind of take that route where it's like, oh, I have a kid now, I'm not allowed to have fun anymore. And I don't mean fun as in, like, yeah, of course you're not gonna, like, stay out getting wasted until like 4 a.m. all the time or something, but more so, like, letting ourselves just enjoy life in general. Like, I feel like we start to kind of contain ourselves to the classic, like, white picket fence mentality of, like,
the Midwest mentality.
Right, exactly. Like, oh, well, I've got a kid now, and I guess I've just gotta go this route. And again, not everybody does that, but some people do, and it's always interesting to hear how people navigate that.
Yeah, and you said a very, 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 the most important word of my journey of learning what I want and where I want to be and navigate from this point as I got older is fulfillment. It's like things that were fulfilling to me at 25 are not fulfilling to me at 32. It was never fulfillment. It was just the constant thrill of, chasing this thing. But, one thing I'll say throughout my journey that has changed is what is really fulfilling to me. And I'm not a traditional person, so I don't relate to, all right, I got this kid, let me, do this. But I understand it. I do understand it.
Right.
But I was blessed to be around friends who were entrepreneurs, living their dreams and still being good husbands, fathers, business owners, leaders in the community. And I got to see that. And it was like, like I said, I've always been observant. I've always looked for people who were in places that I wanted to be. Whether it's just one thing, whether you're a horrible person but you're very good at business, or you're just great all around person. So I seen it. Like, I knew it was possible. I knew I could wake up every day doing something I love to do, or pursuing something that I love to do, and still be a great father, great partner, all of these great things. So I didn't have to settle. And I don't want to say that people are settling, but in my process was, I don't have to settle for a life that I don't want to have. I could still have that too. I could still pursue that. And my kids get to see that. And that's the most important thing, is like, my children's mother's a nurse. Like, they get to see their mom doing such an impactful job, making, really being somebody who changes lives on a daily basis. And then they get to see their father, who is a creative, who works in creative spaces. And when they come to work with me, it's never the same 2 days in a row. One will come with me on a photo shoot. Next day we're at the office. But even the office I work out of is a co-working space with people working on 10 different projects. They got their own little room where they go in and they're designing clothes and coming out and showing. It's just, I enjoy that. And I love them being able to see non-traditional as well. So that's kind of that was my outlook on being a parent and creative.
100%. Now, maybe we're jumping ahead, or maybe it's literally right now where we are, I don't know, and you've kind of already said this a little bit, but like, do you feel like there was a moment in time where you identified what fulfillment really looked like to you?
Very recent.
Okay.
Very recent. Because I got to a point in my career where I got over the hump. I couldn't get away from money. It was chasing me. I was like, it was the greatest run I ever had. Everything was going good in that regard. But I started to look around. I started to pay attention to how I felt. I started paying attention to how I felt per endeavor. I was doing marketing for a restaurant. I was doing event production for Ohio State. I had Soul Classics. I was still working with TACMA. I was still doing events. All of these things at one time. And all of those things pretty required my direct attention. It wasn't like, all right, let me hire a team to do this, to do that. So it was all taking a piece of me. So then when I'm with my children, when honestly, I'm spending less time with my family, not with my kids, but like my overall family. And then when I'm with my children, I find myself answering emails the whole time and, finishing deadlines the whole time. And even with my work, it became not a passion, but a deadline. Like, all right, let me meet this deadline for everything. And none of those people hired me to meet a deadline. All those people hired me because they know what I'm going to bring to the table, not just, all right, this is what we want to accomplish, and it needs to be done by Thursday. Boom, Thursday, I'm done with that. Now I'm this. Like, those people hired me and paid me what they paid me because I'm like, you're going to give me this much, and I'm going to make this much out of it, and you're going to be like, that's the Rio I know. Like, that we got a bargain, not like, man, I could have hired a marketing agency to do this for less, whatever. So at that point, I was like, all right, the money is there. I'm doing things that look cool from the outside, but how do I feel? Like, what am I sacrificing at this point, and is it worth it? And then now it's like, I get to wake up. I have two beautiful, healthy daughters that I can never ask for anything more than that in the world. I got family who love me. I got great friends that I've developed through all these years, and they're, I have everything in the world a person could ask for. I wake up every day. I love working at Soul Classic. It's like fashion. I just came back from Paris, like for the 6th time. I'm in Paris Fashion Week twice a year. Like I'm travel all over the world, and that I live the dream, like my dream. Like I live the life I go to sleep and I dream about. But I overextend myself in so many ways that it kind of takes away from the dream. It kind of like, I don't feel like I'm waking up and living a dream. I feel like I got to wake up. If I normally wake up at 6, I got to wake up at 4 now because I need those extra 2 hours to meet all these deadlines. Yeah. You know, and that's...
Yep, 100%. Well, that's like, I think it's funny because like as a creative, an entrepreneur, you know, whatever, when you're trying to live like that rather unconventional life, we're so worried about like avoiding the regular machine.
Right.
And so we build all of our other machines, but then we effectively build our own machines that we then get stuck in.
Right.
And it becomes that same thing. I'm sure you've seen, like, it's a cliche saying, and I don't know exactly what it is, but like it's the idea of like you work so hard to avoid a 9 to 5, 40 hours a week, but you end up doing 100 hours a week, like 24/7 all the time. Like, and that's why like it is so valuable to identify what is actually fulfilling me and what is, because just like you said earlier, it's important to remember that like fulfillment changes over time.
For sure.
It's not just, oh, well, when I was 20 years old, I wanted to be this. And now if I stop being that now, what am I doing? I'm turning my back on myself. I'm failing. I'm quitting. That's not right. And it's like, no, we're supposed to change and evolve.
Yeah.
And so of our interests. So in naturally what fulfills us is going to change and evolve. For sure. I had that same process in the last handful of years where like I had to kind of re-identify with myself. Like I was doing the same thing where I was like, oh, I sort of effectively created all of my own jobs, which is amazing.
For sure.
Big win.
Yeah.
But I then just had a bunch of jobs. Right. And it was like, wait, like now it's like I achieved the dream, but I was still pretending as if I was chasing it.
Right.
Right. Rather than like,
where's the real fulfillment come then? Like,
exactly.
I'm constantly. So how did you feel? Like, what your idea of fulfillment today? Is it the same at like right now as it was then? Like when you were in that pocket where I don't want to work a job, so let me go create 5 jobs.
Yeah, like, so not at all, honestly. It's like there's ties to it, but I think they're vastly different because now my idea of fulfillment is so much more clear than back then, you know, when I was, you know, getting into like the creative realm or whatever. Like I wasn't sitting being like, I want to be an entrepreneur, or I didn't know what a freelancer was, right? I just knew I wanted to make stuff for a living. Yeah. That was the goal, right? And I knew I didn't want to go to college. So I was like, okay, I just need to dive head first into this stuff because luckily somehow like 19-year-old me was like, I don't want to go into a bunch of debt for something that's probably not going to really help me in the long run for things that I want to do. Right. It's valuable for others. I don't think it was for me, and I'm kind of glad I avoided that. But it was like this balance of, I just knew I wanted to be creative. I knew I wanted to try and work for myself. Obviously, it wasn't an immediate thing fresh out of high school. Like, I didn't go to college, but I worked, you know, regular jobs while I was trying to figure out all these creative endeavors. So at that point in time, what fulfillment looked like, even though I didn't even know what that word meant, it was very much like, I just want to say I'm creative. Yeah. Right? I just want to be able to say, like, when someone's like, what do you do? I want to be like, oh, I do photography for, you know, it's like, that was all I was looking for, right? And it was more so like, I feel like at that point in time when I was younger, my fulfillment was almost in the chase. Yeah. Right? Sure. It was like, am I doing the thing? Right? Hell yeah, I am. Like, awesome, this is dope. Rather than what result am I getting from it and how does that fulfill me? Right.
And it's still like exact same for me, but also the chase is still a part of my fulfillment.
Exactly.
But I actually am chasing something rather than just chasing to be chasing to, I don't know, where the finish line changes every day.
There's an intention.
It's intentional
in the journey.
Exactly.
And it's a classic, like, it's not about the destination, it's about the journey, learning to enjoy that. That's what I wasn't doing at the beginning. Yeah. Right? It was definitely like, and not that I didn't even know that I needed to enjoy the journey. Right. It was just, I want the destination. I want to get there so I can say I'm a filmmaker. I want to get there so I can say I'm self-employed. I want to whatever. And where now, like, fulfillment for me, like, you know, I subscribe heavily to, like, a couple ideas of, like, one is, like, who are you when no one else is around? Yeah. Are you the same, you know, version of you that when a bunch of people are around, like, yeah, we're going to be maybe a little more energetic and stuff, right? When I turn this podcast on, I get a little bit of a podcast voice. I can identify that, right? Sure. But ultimately, if you and I were having this conversation in a coffee shop somewhere, we would be having the same conversation.
For sure.
Right?
Your morals, your character, your values can stay consistent.
Exactly. Like, it's that authenticity part, right? Yeah. And I think that is what so much more of what I learned to identify is that, you know, it wasn't about like the chase and looking cool and trying, because like it was about that for a little bit of time, even though I didn't necessarily know it was.
Yeah.
But I don't think, you know, it takes time to kind of learn our authentic self, I think.
For
right?
sure.
We learn through trial and error, the ups and the downs and all that sort of stuff. And it's like, when I also look at where I'm at now, like the other thing that I think about is in the same vein of like, who are you when no one else is around, right? When everybody leaves the room. I would also say, who are you without the internet?
Right.
So it's like, without this ability to showcase a highlight reel, would you be doing and pursuing the same things? Now, of course, there's things like content creation that you know people wouldn't be doing.
Right.
But still, would you find a way to, you know, would I be trying to get a job in radio where I could do this?
Right.
Right? Is it like, do I love having conversations this much that I would find another way to do them? And the answer realistically is yes.
Yeah.
But I can also identify how now, as an adult, or at least somewhat of an adult, I can identify like what actually fulfills me.
Yeah.
And it's not so much the content. It's not the like, it's not likes or followers or attention. And for a while it was.
Yeah.
But you're chasing something that's like, that's a constant move of a goalpost.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's a whole other conversation.
It matters,
but
it's not the fulfillment. It matters because you're still building a business. You're still, and it just feels good to see, oh, people like my work, you know. That gives a level of helps your confidence, keeps you going when maybe, you know, I'm like, do you know, is my work really that important, you know? Though it's a little thing, but it's not the fulfillment in it. But
it's not the thing, right? It's like we can't attach our wins to, did this get 100 likes, did this get like, it's more so like, I would rather sit and be like, did I have a really good conversation with somebody today? For sure. Dope. You know, me and you leave here today and now we know each other, we form a friendship, we have this long conversation. I'm more stoked about that than, I'm not going to look at this episode and if it doesn't get 50,000 downloads, I'm not going to be like, well, wasn't worth it. Correct. No, 100%. It's the connection that's worth it. Yeah. And I think where my fulfillment has changed over the years is less about and I don't want to say this wrong because I've never been a materialistic person, but for lack of a better term, it became less about the materialistic part of it and more about just the real life part of it. Right. Like, what connections are you making? What things are you doing that potentially help somebody while fulfilling yourself? And it's like, it's become, again, less about like the product or the result. It's like, yes, I want that to be good. Of course, we've already talked about it. I, of course, take making this show seriously. For sure. I want it to be presented well, and I want people to look at it and be like, oh, that's real. That's a real show, right? But at the same time, the value for me is what we're doing right now. For sure. That is the ultimate value. So that was like a very long-winded way of, you know, answering the fulfillment thing of like, my fulfillment has become less about, did I get the really cool result, and more about, did I feel good doing it? Yeah. That's ultimately like, how did it really make me feel? What was the experience that I had while I was doing that? Because there have been creative endeavors over the years that I've either completely quit doing or lowered on my like totem pole of importance because I can see it doesn't fulfill me in the same way. Yeah. But when I can identify one particular part of it, of like, well, you know what? I don't really like all of this, but as long as I get this one box with a check mark in it, I'll feel good. I'll feel good. Right? Yeah.
And you mentioned something, and this is like a little off topic, but still on topic. But you mentioned something that stood out to me. That's something that's like very important to me in my journey. One of the main things is that I try to push is that you could actually do something you enjoy for a living, right? That's like one of my main things. But another thing is like talking to my older self, because for a majority of my coming into manhood, it always was about the image. It always was about the persona. And everything I did was for the image and for the persona and never for the actual self. It was really because when people see Rio, they need to see this. I need to be dressed like this. I need to be, you know, talking to these type of girls. I need to be in these type of places. My friends need to look like this. It was really about the image. And I was dealing with so many things behind the image that some people knew that were close to me, but a lot of people didn't, and I was hurting myself more than anything because I was just chasing this persona. And like, and social media wasn't even what it is now at this time, so to like, that's another thing that like, whenever I get a chance to talk to somebody young, I'm always like preaching, like, do it for yourself. Like, what I'm saying? Do things that, like, none of this stuff really matters. Even as an adult, I find myself like neglecting a priority for a want, like, just like a lot of this stuff you see on the front facing is like, doesn't even matter. It's not even important. There's no longevity in it. The longevity is investing in yourself, whether it's eating right, going to the gym, or taking time to yourself and being honest with yourself and being very selective about the environments that you're in, the friends that you're choosing. Like, those are the things that are going to pay dividends in the long run. Those are the things that are going to take your life from here to here, not investing everything into your image, whether it be clothes and shoes and hair and makeup, or, a persona that dies out quick, and people don't really care. Like, it's you're going to get more likes, you're going to get more shares, which can, become a content creator or influencer or whatever, but which is a business, is good if that's what you're chasing. But for a lot of people, I just try to like tell them, like, or give the advice of, make the investment in yourself brick by brick rather than chasing this instant image or this thing, because it burns out a lot of time, or you don't even know yourself anymore. It's just, it's tough for me to articulate it because it's more of a feeling than anything. But that, you touched on it, and for me that was a big thing. Like, in the beginning, it was just all about the persona, and then I burned out, I crashed out, I was like in a very dark place, and then I rebuilt from there. And then that's when things really changed.
So that's that little bit that you just said there at the end was actually kind of leading into another question I wanted to ask you.
Definitely.
And obviously sharing whatever details you want to share. But when we're talking about that quote unquote dark place of sort of the crash and burn, what does that look like? And like, when you're starting to identify that there's changes that need to be made, like, what are those like difficult changes that you feel like popped up?
When I really started to notice is when I started to neglect priorities to chase this thing, this image, this what I'm being perceived as. I start, for example, I had a girlfriend, and it's like, nah, I need, people know me as a guy who gets these girls, so it's like, you lose that part of your image, and this is obviously, I was a kid, this is like 18 years old, but that's a trend that carries, even if it transitions to a different thing. Like, there were times where, I, even financially, like, I don't have any money, but I'm going to spend my last money to keep up with this image, or I have to be at this place where these people are depending on me, but there's this other place where if I go there, that's where everybody's going to see me at, that's where everybody's hanging out, partying, doing this. But it's like, there's these people here that are depending on me, that I mean a lot to what's going on for them, and me not being there is detrimental to them. Whether it's friends, family, whatever it may be. There have been times where it's like, I just would neglect a priority if it meant maintaining this image, and what kind of changed it for me was, people aren't going to deal with that. You're going to lose friends. I've lost friends. Have started to distance themselves from me. Relationships were taking a tumble. Obviously, your finances never get over the hump because you're constantly chasing an image. It's like everything started to, it's been moving away, but it finally got so far that I noticed it. And I'm like, I'm losing everything for nothing because I really didn't gain anything. You know what I'm saying? Like, these people aren't my real friends. These people they don't really care about me. It's just like, these people are attached to an image that's not even really me. Where the people who were like really loving me and caring about me for who I really was, or the people I was neglecting. So it's like, once I got to a point where I just sat down and I started to see, again, longevity, what I'm doing today, where is it going? Like, what does this road lead to? And good and bad, and once I'm able to sit down and think about that, it was a no-brainer. It was like, yo, how do I feel? I feel good when I'm on the scene, but then when I leave, that it's empty because none of those people are there. and then the people I let leave my life that really cared about me aren't there anymore. So it's like an empty feeling. And then so you have to keep chasing that on the scene because that's the only place you get that feeling. But, so once I just kind of sat down and really just kind of started creating my life, like designing my life, I created everything but my own life. Now it's like time to really, who do you want to be? Where do you want to be? How do you want your friends to perceive you? Once I had kids, I was already kind of, I was like, all right, how do you want your kids to perceive? Like, how do you want them to talk about their dad? How do you want your woman to feel about her man, to sit back at the end of the day like, man, I really got a good man. I know I can call him for anything. I know if he say it's going to happen, it's going to happen. It's off my plate now. I don't have to worry no more. What you're doing now is not giving them that, being able to say that. So I started creating my life and deciding who I wanted to be, and all those things played a factor in that from that point.
Was that time frame of effectively deciding like, hey, I need to create my life for me, not for the persona or the facade or whatever it may be, right?
Yeah.
How was that an overnight change?
No.
Was it an overnight switch? Was it months? Was it years? Explain the work that maybe you had to do.
Some of those things take place in the current.
Mm-hmm.
It's a constant thing. I don't think it ever stops.
Yeah.
But where it really took a big jump was, like I said, I started to see people separating themselves from me. And it's like, I'm Rio. I'm this thing that everybody sees. Why would you want to separate yourself from me? But it's like, nah, you're really him. You're really, this guy. But you're starting to really believe you're this guy, but in reality you're this guy, and once I had to come to terms with that, from that point, then it became a lifelong journey, because who I want to be, I'm nowhere near that person yet, but I'm making the steps of being very intentional about my friends was the first thing. And that's still a constant thing. There are friends who are great for this part of my journey, but they might not be great in this part of my journey. It might not be somebody I can spend every single day with. Their path may have took them in a completely different direction. So it's a constant thing, but I just started being very intentional in different areas of life, and I started maturing and growing, and I'm still doing it. There are still things that, maybe just 2 weeks ago I might have been like, I need to do better at this. I need to be better in this area. This is something that I'm not proud of, so it's a constant.
And I think that having the clarity on the fact that we do have to do maintenance on ourselves
For sure.
ever so often, that is the real value.
For sure.
Because none of us are ever going to sit and be like, oh, well, once I started thinking about having a positive mindset, I was just good from there on. It's like, no, everything is always going to be an up and down.
Yeah.
And I think that is the real value in everything that you just said is like, it's learning to maintain those things. Yeah. It's learning to figure out, what does my consistency look like? Not consistency of I'm perfect every day and there's never going to be anything else I have to change.
Yeah.
But it's just like you said, it's like, I don't know, 2 weeks ago there could have been something. 2 weeks from now there might be something that I identify. Else. That again, that is part of the journey of always learning that we are always changing, we're always growing. But learning to embrace that, because I feel like a lot of us do get stuck in that, once we achieve a thing, it's almost like a video game analogy where if you were playing a video game, you wouldn't just get to level 2 and be like, this is probably it.
Yeah.
I made it to level
2. I'm good. Next time for the next game.
It's like, this is essentially an infinite video game, right?
Right.
Where it's like, no, you're always going to learn and gain new things that are going to help you with the next quote unquote level. But guess what? There's a level after that and a level after that. And what we learned here might help us get to level 5, but then at level 5, we're going to have to learn a whole new set of tools.
Yeah.
And I think having the clarity on that is huge. Having the clarity on, and that's an overused term nowadays, maybe, but maybe for the right reasons, right? The fact that people are learning about clarity of what that really means in your life. And I think that clarity means things aren't going to be picture perfect after I make one change.
Right.
Making that one change adds a new tool to my tool belt that I am then able to use when the next change needs to be made.
Yeah, I always look at it as like business. It's like, okay, I've done really good at this level, but to get to the next level, these people that I'm going to be doing business with, this level of company I'm going to be running, this, it requires me to learn a whole new part of business. Like now I was a freelance. Now I have 25 employees. Now I have to learn how to, set up systems and, and really develop a business through operations and hiring people and be a good manager, be a good leader, be a good hire, be a good judge of talent. Like I didn't have to do any of this down here. Mm-hmm. So, it's just constant developing, constant improving. And one thing that I really, really chase is the simplest life of the highest quality. That's like my thing. Like I don't need a million of anything. I just need one or two of the greatest in each area. I don't need 55 friends. I need a couple friends who are great people I can lean on, I can trust, I love with all my heart, and they give me the same back. I don't need, 100 girls. I just want the simplest life of the highest quality, and that's in every aspect of my life. And that's kind of how it's kind of been my thing for a while. I think one of my friends, Jerome, said it. One of my friends tweeted it one day or said it or something, and I just was like, dang, it just hit me. Like, nah, that's it. Like the simplest life of the highest quality is what I'm in pursuit of. And it's a constant, like we continue to say, it's constant work and clarity. But I just kind of got to the point where I can sit back and see and look at every part of my life and be like, if I continue this way in this area, what's it going to lead me to? And is it getting me to the ultimate goal? If not, then there needs to be some work done there.
Yeah, I absolutely love that saying, and I feel like I relate to that a ton.
For sure.
Like the simplest life of the highest quality, because I feel like that is often what I'm now. When we're talking about the fulfillment thing earlier, it's like that ultimately is what brings me fulfillment.
Yeah.
Right? It's like I can sit nowadays and be like, I don't necessarily, I'm not chasing again the attention or the fame of something or the whatever. Now it's just like I just want high quality interactions, high quality relationships, high quality whatever output from me that then gives me something in return.
For sure.
And that can be a relatively simple life. And I don't know if it's just like what happens when you turn 30 and your brain chemistry changes a little bit. But I turned 30 early this year, and I feel like that's when all of this wave of everything sort of really started to hit, where I was like, I don't need a lot. And not that I was needing a lot up to that point. I had established that a few, handful of years ago where I was like, I don't really want a crazy life, right? But I feel like it settled in so much more that I have this strange comfort, but I think it comes from such a place of clarity of knowing who I am. I have such a strange comfort now that if anything I was doing ceased to exist tomorrow, and I was aware of it, I would be bummed, but I wouldn't be defeated or destroyed.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I'm so clear and just confident in who I am, what I do, and why.
Yeah.
That I'm I would just figure something else out, right? Because ultimately my happiness does not come from that one thing.
For sure.
Right? If something happened where someone was like, hey, you can never, direct a film again. You can never video direct again. You can never whatever.
Yeah.
I'd be like, oh, that kind of sucks, but that's okay. Yeah. All my eggs weren't in that basket anyway.
Yeah. And it's the understanding of, for me, it's just even this is how I kind of deal with the road bumps or, trials and tribulations I'm going through it's just a small part in such a big journey. None of this stuff, obviously there's certain things, family, that if you lose it, it's going to crush you. But there are so many things that are just I'm on this long journey. I tripped over this log. When I'm 20 miles down my journey, I'm not even going to think about that one log I tripped over. Mm-hmm. One time I might fall in my journey and I might scrape all the skin off my elbow, but 30 miles throughout that journey, it's going to be healed. I'm not ever going to think about it ever again. It's just, these are just moments within your journey. And you can either lay there and and let it stop your journey, let it halt your journey, let it alter your journey, or you can continue on your path. And I'm not the most religious person in the world, but I move by faith, and I have a close personal relationship with God, and throughout my journey, I just continue to ask for guidance on my journey. I just continue that I'm staying on the path, and if I get off, that it helps guide me back to it. I'm a very, I just try to be as lighthearted when it comes to a bad time. Like I try, like anybody who ever sees me, I'm going to have a smile on my face 9.5 out of 10 times, because, it's just, I just look at things as just such a small moment, such a big journey. Now, obviously, there are some things that, you could be crossing a bridge and the whole bridge collapse. This is a big thing. But for the most part, that's how I keep my sanity.
It's learning that our reaction to something makes it matter more or less.
For sure.
Right? Things are going to happen. Things are always going to happen.
1,000,000%.
Just like you were just saying, on the whole journey, you might trip here, you might fall down here, you might get over here and think that there's nothing in your path and then a huge gap that you have to figure out how to jump across, right?
Yeah.
Things are always going to happen to us that are either not as bad, slightly annoying, terribly defeating, some of the worst things we could ever encounter ever. And it's pretending, it's not about pretending and be like, oh, everything's just going to be fine. No, it's like, feel your feelings, feel those emotions, 100% live with that however you have to. But also learning, it's like, okay, how I react to this thing is determining the weight that it weighs when I continue to carry it.
If I tripped over that log and I hurt myself, now I'm going to be more mindful of logs throughout the journey. It's like, how do you learn from it? How do you make it? All right, it hurt me in that moment, but how can it help me be better in the long run? And it's not always just that simple. It's not always just, certain things take more time, certain things hurt more, but ultimately that's the overarching, like, how can I take this moment and allow it to help me become better for the rest of my journey? I feel like all these things are preparing me for something. Like, I'm just, this one mistake taught me something, and it might not come into play, but down here when I see that same thing I went through, I know how to handle it, and I know how to help someone else handle it.
Exactly.
So I just kind of try to keep a positive mindset on those things.
So you said, I'm taking us way back here earlier. You had mentioned like Soul Classics, and what's the restaurant name? Marvin's.
Yeah.
When do those things come to be, and how do they come to be? Because the last part we left off on was like you were working at Tiger Tree and everything like that.
Yeah.
How do you get into those?
So TACMA, I was working at TACMA for a while. I was the retail manager. And I went from retail to wholesale, which is getting that brand carried in other stores. So, I'm learning, and I worked in the marketing department. I worked on the design team. I worked in TACMA. I worked in every part of the business. So I really got to learn the business of fashion. And I really got to learn where my strengths and my weaknesses were, or just areas I enjoyed more than others. So TACMA ended up closing the store. I was still working at other parts of the business, and then they end up kind of like putting a halt to the brand. So at that point, it was like the pandemic. Nothing was happening, and I had always wanted to open my own store. I told you I go to sleep at night. If I had $1 trillion, I will open a store. I don't care if it ever makes money. I'm going to make it the greatest store in the world. That's always been one of my things. So I opened up a store called Amongst Peers in the pandemic with 2 friends of mine. And from there, we had the business for a while, and it was just, a lot of our first time, like really in a business partnership. And we just kind of had different ideas on the business. So we kind of just end up halting it for a minute and like, let's just take a step away, revamp it, blah, blah, blah. So at that point, Deontay, who's the owner of Soul Classic, Deontay Johnson, has always been a good friend and a mentor of mine. I have been talking to him throughout this journey because he was helping me with my store, and he was just, giving me game and information. So once that halt kind of happened, I just walked right into that, situation. Soul Classic was like taking off, doing all these great things. And he was like, yo, come on, it's time. When I left Tiger Tree, the first place I went was Soul Classic. It's like, yo, we really not hiring right now. We really don't, it was just, we're not doing it right now. And then after I left TACMA, I just went straight to open up my store. It wasn't like, we had been trying to make this thing work with me coming on with Soul Classic, and it was like perfect timing. So the Marvin's things came about because 2 of my friends, Chuck, Marlon, they owned a bar here called Our Bar and Lounge in Old Town East. And they moved on from that business and they were looking for a different location. So while they were looking for that location, I had been looking for a place myself as well. I was in the market to open up a bar, a lounge, a restaurant. So then we kind of just was like, I was supposed to open up our bar with them the first time. I didn't end up doing it. So we like all came back together like, yo, we found this spot. We used to throw parties at this spot. It's a perfect location, perfect venue. Like, let's do it together. So then, you know, we opened that up together. And then we have our bar, which is opening back up within the next couple months. So that is just, you know, the journey, you know, it's just like all these different elements of the journey. But working at Soul Classic is like a, you know, it's a passion thing. Fashion is like it's passion thing for me. So hopefully I want Deontay to watch this, but I want him to skip over this part because I would have worked there for free. You know, he would have been like, yo, I'll give you $20,000 a year to work full time as a 30-year-old man. I would have did it, you know, but you know, luckily he was like, nah, we're going to take this thing serious. You know, we're going to do it in the right way. So,
yeah. So when you think about, you know, when you look forward to things that, you know, we've talked so much about, like all the things you built thus far and like the events and now Soul and you know, all this sort of stuff. When you look forward, like what is it that you see? Like what are the new things that, you know, because you said earlier, like I find myself as more of like a curator now, right? Like, yes, I'm a creative director and yes, I am in fashion. I'm in these sort of things. When you look forward, what is it that you're wanting when, like, you know what I mean, when you get there?
What I kind of see is throughout our business journey, me, Chuck, and Marlon are all growing tremendously fast, but in a lot of different areas. Marlon is amazing at throwing events. He's amazing at connecting dots and bringing people together. And Chuck is an amazing operator. He can come into business, set it up from top to bottom, run it. And I'm a curator. I do events too. I have a network still. I could bring people out and we have a good time. But I kind of see it's all like, you know, our journey's more forming in that way where it's like, yo, we need a concept. We need the design of the space. We need, you know, what this whole thing looks like. And I'm that guy. I bring that to the table. I put that together and I make sure that everything stays in that branding, you know, in that flower. And, you know, everybody kind of funnels in their direction. So Classic is something I probably will always do. And I'll probably start businesses within Soul Classic. You know, one day I am going to launch my own brand. I'll probably do it through Soul Classic. I really, really want to be in a content space where I'm working with different creatives to all kinds of different creatives to show people that there are careers, so many different unique careers within the creative industry. I'll probably do that through Soul Class. You know, like now I'm at this space where it's like, all right, these are things I'm going to be doing. How do I create spaces within them where I don't have to solely like do it myself? Mm-hmm. I can curate it. Yep. I can be the curator of it and kind of manage it from that point. So it's like, that's kind of where I'm at. Mm-hmm. Right now.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you're navigating all this stuff, you know, we've talked a lot about, you know, as we're pursuing all these different things that we're wanting to do and building the life that we want to build. That takes a lot of change. That takes, you know, relationships changing, friendships changing, all that sort of stuff. Is there anything that comes to mind when I ask you this? Do you feel like there are any major misconceptions that people have about Rio?
One is that I have it all together. I don't really know people's perception of me, mm-hmm. which is weird, but I know a lot of people come to me like, bro, how do you do it? Like, how do you have all of these things?
Let's talk about that idea of thinking that somebody else has it together.
Well, one, I'll dive in to, like, whenever I speak on a podcast or something, I always, like, later I'm so cringy about it because I try to be as vulnerable as possible. I try to say things that maybe later I might be like, dang, I overexposed, or, you know, what do people think about that? But I try to talk in a way that people who may be in a similar situation can like, man, you know, like, I've been through that, or I'm going through that. This is a good perspective. Maybe my perspective can help them, or maybe them knowing that I've been through these things and come from these places can help them. You know mm-hmm. what I'm saying? I just try to be more open in these type of conversations so that maybe people's perception of me will be like, I don't know, maybe now you can actually have a real perception of me. I'd rather you like me or dislike me for real reasons than like me or dislike me for a perception.
Yeah, no, and I can relate a lot in that idea of like, I feel like when you have somebody who is doing things that brings them joy or fulfillment, or they're working for themselves in very simple terms, you will kind of have those misconceptions of those people will be like, oh, you have it all figured out and nothing is ever wrong. And it's like, no, I am in the midst of chaos at all times.
Right.
It's just learning how to control that chaos as much as I can.
Yeah.
And I have very difficult days and very bad days and also very good days, but it's not just, sunshine and rainbows all the time. Yeah. Just because, like, yes, ultimately, are we going to feel maybe more fulfilled or a little bit more joy or whatever? Yes. And that is by design, right? It's because you can build a system that allows you to feel those things.
Yeah.
But I also think, like, to almost add to that from my side is like, I almost feel like sometimes a misconception that people can often have in those circumstances is that it's just all for yourself.
Yeah.
Because like I would say, just like you've said throughout this conversation, so much of what you've done is kind of about the community around you. Yeah. And I don't mean just putting on an event. I mean being able to then help someone else. Yeah. Based off of the position that you find yourself in.
Yeah, my whole, everything about me is collaboration. Mm-hmm. There's nothing I do that's Rio. It's like I throw my best parties with my best friends. I make the best products, with the greatest creatives. My store was called Amongst Peers. Like, everything I do is about people. I love collaborating with people. I love working with amazing creatives because I feel like I'm good at something, but I'm not good at everything. I need people to help bring the vision to life, or I'm a small piece in someone else's big vision, but with me inserting me in that piece, I can help bring this beautiful thing to life. Mm-hmm. So collaboration to me is everything. Community to me is everything. Giving back, I'm still trying to find better ways to give back other than, like, I feel like that's what I try to use these conversations for, but I don't know. I'm still struggling. Like, what is my life purpose? Like, when it comes to giving back, like, how can I, like, once this is said and done, and it's time to like just dedicate my whole entire life to giving back. Like, what does that look like for me?
Do you have a hope of what that looks like?
My biggest hope is that people that come from where I come from can see. Like coming from where I come from is a lack of resources, a lack of everything. So a lot of people are very creative. You have to be creative in how you make money, how you stretch your meals out for the week, how you dress. You got 6 clothing items, how can I still put this together to where it looks cool? How can I, everything is about creativity. You have to be creative to survive, in those environments. So it's like, how can, like, I want people just to see that there are so many other different avenues than just going to work at a job I hate every single day. Mm-hmm. Because I can't imagine that life. I've lived it, but I can't imagine that being my life. Like, what do I have to look forward to if I get to wake up every day and for 9 hours a day, 8 hours plus my hour break, I go somewhere that I hate?
Yep.
I don't want that to be my daughter's life. And if I don't want it to be my daughter's life, I don't want it to be your daughter's life, or the next person. Like, I want the youth to understand, like, you're so valuable. Like, the tragedies you go through, that's the story of my life. A lot of my tragedies led to my triumphs. And I want them to understand, like, you have it. Like, you have the tools. You've been forced to be this way from your circumstances, but there are so many opportunities for you. Like, people like you can make a difference. You can be something that the next generation is proud of. That's what I want. I want people to understand. I want people to be exposed to opportunities, because that's what changed my life. When I was exposed to Richard Crockett and Chris Crockett, to my friend and his father, like, I was exposed to so much just by meeting them. Mm-hmm. When I was exposed to Deontay and, just Yavis Ellis, like, people who I work with today that were always inspirations, that were always doing these cool creative things I never would have even thought to do, but I was exposed. So exposure, is something I really want to work with the youth, and not even just youth, or just people in general, because I feel like a lot of times it's like everything is dedicated towards the youth. So people with 30, however old you are, they're like, dang, like what's there? How can I get into it? You can get into these industries at 40 years old, 50 years old. Like, to me, it's just about exposure, like, and granting people access and opportunities.
Yeah. No, I love that. When you look back at your journey,
Yeah.
what do you feel like has been the most challenging part or challenging thing that you've dealt with?
Just the balance between, like, I got to a place where I started to get all the opportunities that I dreamed of, like being able to work with the companies I want to work with, being hired and paid a certain amount for certain gigs. And now it's like, how do I pick and choose what and what not to do? Like, I've been to the point where I've overextended myself, and I'm at the point now where I'm simplifying my life. But it's just so hard to say no to some of these opportunities, even though you don't have the bandwidth to do it. But your whole life you dreamed of working on a marketing campaign for Red Bull, and you're at a perfect place, and then Red Bull calls, and it's like, it's just, for me, it's navigating like what to say no and what not to say no to. And it seems simple. It's like, if you don't have the time to do it, you don't have time to do it. But man, it's like, it's not that easy for me.
Yeah. Thoughts and ideas weigh a whole lot in our heads.
For sure.
So like it's going to weigh on us a lot. Now, whether it's like during any of those time frames that we're talking about right now, if you were to go back into young Rio's life, okay, we'll play pretend here. Time travel is Rio. If you get to go back and you get to talk to young Rio at some point in your life, where would you go, and what's something major that you'd want to share with him?
I always like, if I could go back to 9th grade, or I'm like, if I could go back to my first day walking on campus at Toledo University. There's always these moments I pinpoint that if I did go back to that point, I would be in a completely different place now. But I also don't know if I would want to. I also really enjoy the lessons that I've learned, even if they were the hard way. Now, one thing I would say is, just be kind to yourself and kind to people. Make that the number one thing. Like that's more important. Like, be there for the people who you need to be there for. Like, prioritize people is kind of what I would tell my young self. And other than that, I really appreciate the hardships that I've had. I really appreciate, and I'll say at this age, I think Jim Carrey said this. I forget. I have a horrible memory. But he said most people, time doesn't even exist to most people until you have more behind you than you do in front of you. And so I never want to be at that point. So if I would have heard that quote sooner, I don't know how much it would have changed, but it's changed me a lot since I've heard it. It's like, I'm really like, all right, that don't even matter. This stuff don't even matter. Like, forget that. Okay, cool. It didn't, like, that doesn't even, this is what matters. This is what I have to pay attention and focus and dedicate time and really just enjoy it. You know what I'm saying? Like, they tell you, enjoy your kids while they're young, because it goes quick. There's no moment, no amount of time someone can tell you that for you to really understand how it happens.
Right.
And seeing that, how fast it happens, it really just slows you down. Like, enjoy right now. Like, enjoy where you are and make the best out of right now, and that leads to a better future. You know what I'm saying? Living in the moment, enjoying those beautiful things around you. So that's something that I wish I could have told myself earlier, but I'm glad I learned it the way I did.
Yeah, 100%. So something new I've been doing on the show here lately is I have been having guests give me a question to ask my next guest.
Okay.
So while I give you a second to come up with maybe what yours can be.
I already know it.
What is yours?
Are you being honest with yourself?
Okay.
That's something because it's so easy just to say the right thing. and I do this all the time. It's so easy just to say the right thing or just to do the right thing in the moment to get past that moment. Like, all right, cool, I said what I needed to say to this person, and we did, I got past that moment, and that experience was cool. But am I being honest with myself in this conversation? Am I being honest with myself, with my employer, with my employees? That's just something that I continue to ask myself, because I come from a space where I wasn't always being honest with myself. And it's really important for me to feel like the people around me love me and not what I'm saying, what I'm putting in front of them.
Yeah.
Is like, the real me. So are you being honest with yourself?
I love
it's
that.
Something I always ask myself.
So one that was left for you,
Okay.
I will now ask, is what was the first moment in your life where you realized who you really were?
Whew. That's a good one. Whoever asked that's a good one. I don't know if it's a moment. I feel like I am creating who I am on a day-to-day basis. I feel like I have goals and I'm not at those spaces yet, but I know who I am in the moment. So I don't know if there was a time where I was like, this is who I am. Like, I am this. Like, to me, it's like, yo, I'm a creative. I'm a curator. Like, the best way to predict your future is to create it. And I live by that. So I'm like, yo, this is who I want to be. This is what I want to do. This is what I want, this is me. And every decision I make from that point is creating that person. So I don't know if there was like a this is me moment.
I love it. I still love it. Rio, my friend, I have one final question for you.
Yes, sir.
And then we have officially made a podcast.
Yeah,
So I end all of these episodes with the exact same question. So now I'm going to toss it to you. So right now, I want you to pretend like everyone in the world is listening to you speak.
Gotcha.
We're throwing logic out the window. They can hear you. They can understand you.
All right,
this is the big movie moment.
All right.
So you have a live mic attached to everyone around the world, and you get to share one thing with them. What is it that you're telling them? What are you sharing? And what do you want them to hear?
Man, can I share like a quote from someone else?
Absolutely.
Man, that's tough. What do I want to share with everyone in the world? Dang. There's something I want to say, but I don't know how to say. It's like, it's every day you have the opportunity to create the life you want. Every day you wake up, you have a fresh start to create the life you want. Like, I hate when people just don't. Like, I have a lot of people around me who don't like their life, who are dealing with depression, and just so many things are going wrong, or one thing is going wrong, and they don't know how to handle anything going wrong. And I want people to know that you can, and you have the opportunity. Just get out of your own way and do it. Just do it. Like, I don't know how to say it. I don't know how to put it in a way where like everybody in the world would be like, oh, that's, dang, that's right. In a good way. I want to say it in a way that people, it sounds cool. Like, every day you have a opportunity to, whatever, build this dream life. But in so many words, every day you have everybody doesn't wake up the next day. So if you're blessed with the opportunity to wake up with another day, pursue a life that you will be proud to live.
Rio, this has been a blast, man. I am so very stoked that we got to make this happen.
Pleasure.
I am very, very stoked that you were down. It has been an absolute pleasure to like get to know you in this way.
Yeah.
So before we leave everybody, is there anything that you want people to go check out? Do you want them to go seek out any of the work you do, any of the brands you work with, anything like that? If so, where can they do that?
I mean, of course, if you're into clothing or footwear like I am, always pull up to Soul Classic. If you love a good bite to eat and a nice cocktail, always pull up to Marvin's. But more importantly, tap in with me. My Instagram is Rio_Hairston. Just tap in. It's always good to build your network and talk to people Obviously, this conversation was less about what I do and who I am, and more about what I've been through and where I come from. So if any of that was like relatable, you know what I'm saying, tap in. You know, if anybody was like, you know, got more questions or want to link on, you know, projects that they think are, you know, pushing the cause of anything that I spoke about that's important to me, you know, always an open book and always willing to, you know, tap in. So, yeah.
I'm stoked we made it happen, man. I can't thank you enough for hanging out with me and chatting and
Appreciate
sharing
it.
all the life stories and everything, man.
Yeah.
Thank you so
I'm
much.
horrible at this. Like,
No,
I
you're
talk
not.
in
Nope.
circles, I ramble, but, you know, hopefully maybe there was one or two things that, you know, could spark an interest in somebody.
I'm telling you, as somebody who was listening across the table to everything you just said, it was all great. There was no rambles or anything like that. And if there's ever a place for the long rants and rambles about like life and all the things we've learned, this is the place for it. So, dude, I appreciate everything you shared.
No, definitely.
This was seriously a blast of an episode to make, man. Thank you so much, dude.
Thank you.
Okay, big thanks to Rio for being on the show. Of course, make sure to go check out all that he does. It'll all be linked in the show notes. You know where to find the stuff at now. And speaking of links, be sure to double check and make sure that you're following this show at WYDH Pod. You can follow me personally if you'd like to. I am at Ross Tyson just about everywhere. That even includes TikTok now. I'm trying to use TikTok a little bit more. This podcast is also on there, again, at WYDH Pod. I also ask you to double check that you're subscribed on whatever platform you check this out on, whether it's Apple, Spotify, wherever it is. I appreciate the support. Take a quick moment as well and toss a 5-star rating wherever you're listening to this at as well. It all adds up, folks. It truly, truly does help a ton if you do it. And of course, you can find these episodes in video form on my personal YouTube. That's youtube.com/Ross Tyson. Tyson is spelled Theisen. But that is a wrap for this episode. I must bid you adieu. It's time to say goodnight and goodbye. So thanks for listening. Thanks for looking. You're wonderful, and I will catch you in the next one where I sit down with my next guest, somebody who you may or may not know of, as they share their story that you for sure never heard.